It's time to pluck a game off of my shelf that I've been wanting to replay for a while, Super Double Dragon. I'm a pretty big fan of the original NES games, and yes, that includes the often misunderstood third game. I don't understand the hate that game gets. Anyway, Super Double Dragon is a fantastic return to the side-scrolling beat-em-up action that we all know and love. Just like pretty much every other Double Dragon game, you get to play as Billy and Jimmy, although the latter only appears in the two-player mode. According to the manual, in this iteration, Marion, the woman who is always assaulted and kidnapped, is now a competent policewoman who was investigating drug-related crimes in the city. She disappeared while investigating the Black Shadow Warriors gang, as she does, and now Billy and possibly Jimmy set out to save her. True, this plot isn't very deep, but it's a beat 'em up, and storylines are just there to set the stage to throw your fist in the enemy faces. And that you will do. Often. You will be tested by multitudes of thugs, all wanting you dead. It's a good thing that Billy is a martial arts pro because he has some new moves to bring to the table. Let's start with the basics. If you've never played a beat 'em up before, this is how it works. You move to the end of the screen and attack any foes that approach you. You can throw punches and kicks and keep blasting them until all of the enemies are defeated and you move on. Simple. As for basic attacks, you have your standard punches, kicks, and jumps. If you punch or kick an enemy enough times, they will be stunned and wobble on their feet. If you move forward to grapple the enemy, Billy will grab them by the head, at which time you can hit the punch button to throw an elbow into their skull, or the kick button to introduce knee to face. You can also hit the jump button to throw the grappled opponent into any enemy that is getting a bit too close to your back. What's new to this game is what the B button does. Block. That's right, you now have a dedicated block button. This may seem strange in a beat 'em up, but I can assure you, it works great. But it's not just to defend yourself. If you hit the block button as the opponent is swinging a standard punch or kick, Billy will grab their limb and hold onto it. Now your attacks function as if you have done a normal grapple with them. Hit punch to backhand the enemy, and kick to throw a low kick to the shin. Hit them a few times, and then Billy will land a final rapid set of blows to the enemy before they fall away. If you can get the timing of these counterattacks down, it can be a very useful tool in your arsenal. There's also a strange meter that is underneath your life bar. This is called the Dragon Power Gauge. By holding L or R, this meter will start to build. Throwing a punch when there is any juice in the bar will cause a spinning backhand to be used, instantly stunning anyone it smacks. Throwing a kick results in a quick jumping roundhouse. Let the bar build up to at least halfway, and press A to perform the trademark spinning roundhouse I rely on so heavily in Double Dragon 3. Finally, if you can find the time to fully fill the bar up, Billy goes into a sort of rage mode, where his attacks are much more powerful, usually causing enemies to meet the ground in a single blow. This is nice and all, but it does take a long time for this dragon power to build up to that level, so you may not bother using it. Truthfully, you can easily complete the game without using the Dragon Power Gauge at all. So yeah, you have quite a few moves at your disposal, and you'll need the majority of them, as these enemies do not let up. Unlike many beat-em-ups, these thugs will constantly be trying to outsmart you by attempting to get behind you as you pummel their friends. They will also frequently go on the defensive, throwing up their own blocks, while all you can do is keep mashing the attack buttons. This does tend to get a bit frustrating in the final few areas of the game, where enemies will seemingly block 90% of your strikes. They are also smart with their weapons, throwing daggers when they are pretty sure that you are going to get hit by them. You should also take extreme care in avoiding weapons in general, as they really do hurt. Knives take off about half of your health bar, while grenades, easy to avoid as they are, may result in instant death if the explosion strikes you. There are other weapons like boomerangs, bow staffs, and nunchucks, and these do slightly higher than normal damage to our heroes. However, using them yourself can empty a room quickly. Also, weapons remain with you until the area is clear, so take advantage of that while you can. It's kind of obvious, but you'll be wanting to avoid taking damage. But this is more so because your life is only replenished between stages. There are no healing items in this game whatsoever. Neither are there extra lives. You have 3 lives plus 5 shared continues, as in if you are in a 2-player game and your buddy uses a continue, you're now down to 4. In addition, if you do lose a life, when you respawn, there's not really any invulnerability frames, so you're going to want to either move or go on the offensive immediately. Thankfully, the game isn't terribly difficult. Yes, the enemies will constantly flank you, but you do have enough weapons, including a backwards kick, to keep them at bay. Even the bosses are kind of pushovers. Unfortunately, there's also only 7 levels, so the game can be completed in about an hour, possibly even in your first playthrough. That sucks, but the game is a blast. You might have noticed the somewhat slow pace, but I can assure you that this works in the game's favor. It gives you more time to enjoy the beatdowns that you are laying on your opponents, and it also helps set up some pretty sweet looking moves, like punching an enemy out of the air. You can also easily strike incoming projectiles, such as kicking a knife coming for your head, or using a bow staff to fling a grenade back to the thrower. This slow pace also makes setting up the counterattacks a much easier task. There is some decent detail to the graphics. There aren't a huge variety of enemy characters to fight, which is a minor downside, but they each have an impressive amount of moves for the throwaway bad guys. Billy and Jimmy also have some nice detail to their animations, including facial expressions for some of the moves. The stages themselves look pretty impressive, including the starting city that reminds me of the Streets of Rage games, an airport complete with battle on a runway, and a fist fight on an insanely lengthy semi-trailer. And of course this crashes, flinging Billy off and onto the truck's hood with no lasting damage. The music, on the other hand, is hit or miss. For the most part, I enjoy it, especially the level 1 theme. Levels 3 and 5 have remixed versions of the original NES Double Dragon theme song and level 1 song. I enjoyed this little touch. However, the final stage has a very repetitious and lackluster track, which culminates in a final boss that's possibly one of the easiest final bosses in beat-em-up history. Sure, he takes a ton of hits, but he's not very difficult to defeat. He doesn't even get his own boss music. Lame. Overall, Super Double Dragon may be a beat-em-up that is slower in action than its peers, but it's so much fun to play. You have a ton of moves at your disposal, the enemies will constantly be testing you, and the overall action will keep you moving forward. Sure, the story belongs in a dumpster, but who needs a good storyline in a beat-em-up? You're just here to kick ass and take names. Sure, I do wish it was a bit lengthier and had more variety in its enemies, but we can't have it all. If you are a fan of the genre and have an SNES laying around, this is a must-play. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.